Hi there, thanks for tuning in. This is episode 14 of my Superhero Finder podcast / YouTube series for IDIFM, which of course is I'm doing it for me. Shameless little plug there. Okay, so today I have got an amazing guest. So I used to work with this person many moons ago when I was working in an office job for a health insurance company. And it fits really well that this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. Okay, so it's about getting out in nature, getting out and spend some time on yourself, but getting some fresh air and really looking after your mental health and also your well-being as well. So we're going to get into the conversation. Her name's Vicky Jones. She's a quality person, ray of sunshine. I can't speak highly of her enough. So get yourself comfy, get yourself a drink, and let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14. I am joined today by Vicky Jones. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Matt. I'm good.
Perfect. And we're going to talk about, we've just been talking before this as well on a couple of things, and I want to really touch on those, but we're going to be talking about things like imposter syndrome, especially for Mental Health Awareness Week, which is this week, and also the idea of investing in yourself to be able to then be the best you can be, to then look after other people and to look after those around you as well. So I'm really excited about this, especially with the kind of arena that I'm in and the things that I do, and I'm doing it for me, and that is about taking care of yourself. So my first question for you is, so let's talk about mental health, with it being the awareness week. So what is mental health to you?
So mental health to me is, I don't like the phrase mental health. I like mental well-being, because I think when you say mental health issues comes to mind, and people get confused over what mental health means to them. So mental well-being to me means that you're able to balance the good and the bad, because we all go through challenges and opportunities, life events that will sharpen us a little bit, and we'll become more aware of our mental well-being, if that makes sense. As a business, in terms of what I do, my pure purpose is to support employees to ensure that they themselves have the tools to keep that balance and the services and support that they need. Again, throughout these life events, things challenge us all the time. So it's just being aware that, you've got that toolkit. You need to look after yourself. You need to do it for yourself first before you can, maybe venture out and do other things or help other people. So mental well-being is so important to me personally, and as a business as well. I do have the luxury of helping some genuine caring employers to help look after and support their staff with mental well-being. But there's so many different things that we could talk about when we talk about mental well-being. I've done a lot of personal development over the last 12 months. So it means a different thing to me than it did 12 months ago pre-pandemic, certainly.
And that leads me very nicely on, and by the way, just as not necessarily a side point, but I like the definition of well-being as opposed to health, because I agree. When we say physical health, then we know what that means. And actually, by definition, mental health is the same. It's you're either in good health or you're in bad health, and there can be challenges with that. But the term mental health has its own stigma, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are, as a society now, we are removing that stigma. I get so encouraged when I see, posts and conversations. I think it is all about connectivity. I think the impact of having conversations and feeling secure enough to talk about how you're feeling and to talk about your mental well-being, and to understand that we all have these insecurities, we all have these moments of anxiety, and we all have low mood, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think I've seen huge improvements throughout my career in terms of organizations looking at mental well-being and their sort of attitude to it, as well as just generally people, communities talking about it together. So yeah, it's been great to see, especially with it being Mental Health Week. It's great to talk about it, but I'm continually talking about it. I know you are as well. But yeah, it's definitely changed. The attitudes have changed for the better, I think.
They have, and I think definitely the events of the last year, 18 months, even 2 years, especially, it's been happening before that where it's becoming more prominent, but definitely I think there's been a need to reprioritize what's important to you, especially over a lockdown period with the pandemic, etc. But I wonder, I know you wanted to talk about some of the, and I'm really interested to find out about some of the challenges that you faced, because I know that has had, there's been several times where it's better, worse, different. There's all these challenges that come up with, like we said, the events of the past year or so. So what is that kind of, what hurdles have you found you've had to jump, and how have you done it?
So I probably would need to go back, if we're talking about my journey with my own mental health, I probably need to go back to sort of my early 20s where I first experienced anxiety. I was very much a people pleaser. I was very competitive, and within my corporate career, I did really well because I had that drive within me. Then probably around 5 years ago, there was a series of events that happened to my family, to me personally, which changed my perception and my purpose in life, I suppose. So the first thing to kind of talk about was 5 years ago, my sister, her partner, he unfortunately died by suicide, which had a huge impact on my sister, my little sister, although she was 27 at the time. And I don't want to go into that story because that's her story to share, but as a sister, supporting her through that, and also being very acutely aware of the lack of services available to him, and he had reached out on several times, and been put in a bit of a holding pattern to access talking therapies and that sort of thing. Supporting my sister through that, having been made redundant, all these things that happened to us. I had an ectopic pregnancy, I had a breast cancer scare, and they all were a series of events that just seemed to flow and follow on from each other. So my resilience was, although I felt like a very strong, capable person, I think there's only so much trauma that you can absorb before you do see an impact. And I did see an impact. And it wasn't until I was physically seeing physical signs of the anxiety that I was going through. So it forced me to look at what is anxiety, what does anxiety look like in me, and what can I do to make it better. Now I had the luxury of having access to counselling services through my employer. This is pre-Pegasus benefits, before I launched my business. I also had the benefit of having health insurance. So when I did go through these physical challenges, it allowed me to be able to get quick diagnosis, and in part give me back the control, because at the time I didn't have much control over anything that was going on. But I think everything happens for a reason, and although these situations and events were very negative, I think they certainly have made me more empathetic, and it's given me a deeper appreciation of my own mental well-being. I thought I was a superhero. I honestly thought I could help everybody and do everything. And I ignored the fact that I needed to look after myself first. I needed to do it for me first. And that then was my journey. That was then my sort of journey to understanding, what can I do to make myself feel better? Now, I did access talking therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, which was immensely beneficial to me, but I needed to do more work and change my lifestyle, change how I lived, how I perceived things, to make sure that I was doing all that I could do with the tools I had to safeguard my mental well-being, to keep me in a happy place.
I think that there's a lot there, and I can already see a lot of strength, and what's great, and I can see a power in as well, the way that you're able to articulate a lot of the things that you went through, and the understanding that you've got as well, and that has no doubt been a part of the way you've been able to come through and be so strong and set up your own business, etc. On the back, and still, you know, essentially in a business world, survive the pandemic as well and build relationships. But I think what's really interesting is that we've got a society where we've got a lot of people. There's something like maybe 70 to 80% of people are givers, so people that care naturally for other people, but will prioritize. One of the almost a downside is that you'll prioritize somebody else's needs over yourself.
Yeah.
And in some worlds they call that an obliger as well. So your priorities are linked to outside influences and outside accountabilities, so therefore somebody else. And that's great. So we're in Britain, we've got the NHS, which is absolutely full of that. So any of your emergency services, you know, you've got other fields as well where it is just about caring. And the most amazing things happen in these places and the most amazing care. But what you get on the flip side is if you haven't got the attention given almost from somebody else to you, if you're in that situation, then you don't prioritize taking it, and you don't prioritize necessarily looking into it, which is where I think that when you said you had I suppose the luxury of the health insurance and the access to some of these therapies, I'm not sure whether it was a luxury. I mean, I presume you meant luxury because it kind of came with the job, essentially, that you were in.
Yeah, I think it's because I've seen both sides. So I've sold, I've helped support sort of SME businesses over the last 12 years to find them health and wellbeing benefits for their staff. And we were having this conversation about the reasons behind employers providing health and wellbeing plans and insurances to staff. It has changed. I'm having different conversations with people now. It's not so much about return on investment and looking better when they're recruiting talented candidates or reducing absenteeism. It's more about doing the right thing and supporting staff when they need it. But I'm having more conversations, I'm really glad to say, about preventative information, education tools, so mindfulness, meditation. Although we do need support when we have these life events, so we do need to have access to trained counsellors sometimes, but majority of people, I think now they are starting to look at what is anxiety and what does positive mental well-being feel like to me, and they're looking at doing things like introducing hobbies. I started running, and that's been had a huge impact. Exercise has had a huge impact on my mental well-being, but it's about informing, and again, not it being a luxury, but just having that toolkit and understanding how you can make yourself feel better. One of the things that has been really an important learning curve for me, we were talking about looking after other people and being reactive. It's very hard to get yourself out of a very dark place, a very deep depression. It's very hard to come back, but by changing your lifestyle and introducing new things on a daily or weekly basis, even sort of a Friday night self-care where you have a face mask, all of these things feed into mental well-being. These things can, if you change and if you think about your mental well-being and introduce these things, they can stop you from what can be quite, you can go from sort of low depression right way up to quite bad depression quite quickly. So by having, being mindful and having these, introducing these changes to your lifestyle can be so impactful and a lot easier to manage than if you let it escalate and don't talk to people and carry on, give in to everybody with nothing left for yourself. Then you become, and I've been in that place, so I can talk about it. I was literally running around helping everybody, and in the end I wasn't successfully helping anybody because I'd let myself go to that extent where I really did need a lot of help and a lot of counselling and support to get me back feeling good about myself again.
That's amazing. Just picking up on something you said there about even having, we as humans, we're creatures of habit, and we do hundreds of things per day, make decisions that we don't even realize we're making, and we're quite autonomous like that. And I think also when you're feeling like that and you're feeling low, you doubt what you're thinking and what you're thinking is right. So when you're having a great day, you know, you might be confident in a decision, but then if you're having I tend to call them my foggy days, or if you're feeling a little bit, just a bit off, or, you know, really, really low, then you tend to doubt that validity of your own opinion. So the more things, almost as a foundation, the more things that you do to look after yourself, they become autonomous in themselves, which is great because you are then automatically putting yourself first in some respects. But also there's a couple of techniques that I've told people and I've tried in the past, and certain things like we talk about affirmations, or we talk about, you know, showing gratitude or writing down things that we're grateful for. But also, you know, if there's any things, any goals, you know, you've got for the day, or any tasks, something as simple as writing that down or saving that somewhere that's accessible for you. So if that almost puts down your intent. When you're having a good day, that puts down your intent and your decision. And then on a day where you're not feeling 100%, you read that. And that's already, it's almost like it becomes an external thing then, because it's almost like a different you. But you've already decided that would be a good idea. So then why would you question it? Because it's, you know, it's a you in a different frame of mind. And some, you know, there's some very, very simple things, like you said, the face mask, just a bit of self-care. Adding a couple of minutes into, you know, some people will be thinking, you know, so some of these things over the last few years have become less, I'll say airy fairy, because some of the things get linked to meditation and a bit hippie and things like that, and things are definitely changing because there's definite benefit.
If you've looked into the actual clinical studies of meditation, it is absolutely insane. The amount of positivity and the amount of how that can affect your mental well-being, it's huge. And mindfulness, I think what you said about sort of making it a routine and seeing reminders, I think that's very powerful, because if you're having a good day and you're doing something, whether it's an affirmation, whether it's journaling, whether it's, you know, having half an hour, you know, a walk outside in daylight, I think that you instantly, in our brain, we match that with how we're feeling. So if you continue to do it, it naturally will help you feel better. But I think people underestimate the power of small changes: hydration, nutrition, sleeping patterns. I say this all the time because I've had that awakening, and I know what a bad night's sleep can do to me the next day. And so I have a certain pattern that I do every night to make sure I'm in bed at a certain time. So my rhythmic pattern is sort of in alignment. There's lots of things you can do for yourself that don't cost any money as well, because a lot of the time you think, you know, you need to book yourself in for, you know, these sort of things and pay for these things. But there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, I literally absorbed so many personal development books and spoke to people like yourself, Matt, who, you know, within my career, I have the privilege of knowing and meeting, and I absorbed everything, you know, from them. I mentioned to you Mindsight Connect, which is a group that I've been visiting with for a coffee morning every Wednesday for the last 12 months. And that's not networking or anything business related. That's just my hour a week where I get to sit and chat with people about positivity. And I learn from every single person. And I'll be having a conversation with somebody about their past experiences or a situation they were in, and I'll be, oh, I thought it was just me. And it's the connectivity, I think, that really does help, as well as the things you can do for yourself. I think talking and being comfortable in talking and connecting with each other, I think they are huge in that mental well-being journey.
Yeah, I think, and I definitely felt that when we came into lockdown, because I was doing a lot of PT work, and I was doing a lot of group work as well with seated exercise. So we had people, you know, I might see 150 people a week, and then all of a sudden you're in a position where not only are you staying at home, but you're essentially, I was speaking to maybe 4 people a week. And that's a huge downturn. And I never realized until maybe a couple of months in that it was the lack of conversations and that kind of stimulation and just letting your mind run in many different directions, that actually you internalize that and you start spending a lot more time with yourself, and you're going, well, hang on,
I had such a bad episode with negative talking to myself, and I didn't recognize it until I started talking to somebody about it. And this is kind of where my imposter syndrome, I sort of self-diagnosed myself. In the early days of starting the business, I was literally on my own, and I was very vulnerable. And although I'd done a good bit of work on myself to get myself to having, you know, positive mental well-being, when I launched the business, all of that came tumbling down on me, and I literally had to sit and think and remind myself and train myself into positive talk instead of negative talk. And I know you offer that in terms of your work you do with your clients, is you know, you help them to start changing the way they talk to themselves and feel about themselves. But I really had to work very hard at it in order to just keep me carrying on, I suppose. It's quite challenging. I don't think I understood what launching a new business would be like. Not really, it's not the stuff that you think of, you know, the high pressure and the responsibility, and not that, just internally how I would feel, and how vulnerable I would feel. And I literally, for probably the first 3 months, I was so overwhelmed by the feeling that everybody was judging me. And, you know, in reality, nobody was, but it was this negative self-talk that I had all the time going. It was like an FM station in my brain. And honestly, and I'd never experienced that before, but it was like having this, you know, having the two people inside of me, and one saying one thing and another saying another. And it was constantly, you know, constant sort of fight to get the positive talk taking over from the negative talk. So yeah, I wanted to mention that, because I know a lot of people go through that, especially where there's changes, life changes, whether there's becoming a new parent, or whether that's sort of changing job roles, or job, you know, working environments even. I think that, you know, you can sometimes have too many of those negative conversations with yourself, and just be mindful that you are doing that, and it has an impact on you and how you feel as well.
Yeah, I think one of the first and most powerful things I was made aware of is actually just capturing that feeling, and then being able to speak, as we said, about articulating things, but just getting on a level where you understand what's going on and accepting it and loving yourself for it. But because you can ultimately change it. Sometimes it's easier for someone than it is for others. But first of all, I'd like to say, when I was introduced to Pegasus benefits on good old LinkedIn, I would not have known that you were going through any of this. So the stuff that you put out, the videos and things and the posts that you put out were exceptional, and I loved everything about it. But it does also show that
God, I was a mess, Matt. I was a mess. I was literally a mess.
Social media programs, you don't see that, do you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I talk about it all the time. I do. I talk about it because I think it's important that you're truthful and you're honest. And I've had help in with that from other people as well, who explained to me that the negative talk in my head is just my brain trying to protect me. So it's sort of fear in your brain. Not because you want to stop yourself from doing it, but it's like a defense mechanism. And once I understood that, I appreciated it, and I could say to the negative talk, I appreciate you being concerned about me looking like a bit of a joke, but I assure you that's not going to happen. So you can go away now. That's absolutely fine. I've got this. I'm fine with it. But until you understand that. And I didn't understand it, and I didn't know why I was feeling like it. And it was the first time I'd had that. I've been very, very confident throughout my career, and I know how well, how skilled I am, and I know what I can achieve. But it was that constant negative talk. It was like literally listening to somebody say you can't do it, you're not worth it, all the time. And that was so destructive to me early on in setting up the business. I probably had a space of 3 months where I sat on a lot of my ideas and didn't do a lot. And as a new business, you can't afford that time. So, but it allowed me to do a bit of work. So I did a bit of self work, and I got through it. I'm grateful to say, but yeah, it was hard in the beginning.
Yeah, and I share that sentiment as well, because there's been times where I feel on top of the world, and I just want to, and basically I'm here to spread anything that I learn. So like yourself, self-development, etc. Speaking to people, learning, being open to learn from anybody, and not being judgmental about somebody's opinions. And that can be hard in itself sometimes if you're not feeling on top form. But I think also when you're setting up a new business, I think it's also when you're working for somebody, because obviously we work for the same company, which is quite nice, and it's a small world that we're now getting back to talking here. But
yeah.
When you're working for somebody, you're almost given a compass. Somebody else is pointing you in the right direction, and you're applying yourself to that direction.
Yeah.
Whereas when you've got your own business as an entrepreneur or self-employed or whatever you want to consider yourself as, you take care of everything.
Oh yeah.
And that, in terms of, you imagine from a corporate, so you imagine the big manager, you got the second line managers, third line, and then you've got you guys on the front line.
You got your marketing team, you got your admin team.
Absolutely. There's maybe people having a conversation, yet you're trying to do that in your head.
Yeah. I do it every day. And I love that. I love the creativity. I love that I can create my own. I've created my own business with my own values. And I've always worked for caring organisations. I worked for two of the largest insurers in the UK, health insurers in the UK, and they had wonderful values and ethics and great products that supported people. But what I can do now with Pegasus Benefits, now that I'm sort of independent of that, is I have a much broader scope of insurers, health plan, wellbeing providers, so that I can use that and use my creativity to make sure that I'm choosing and recommending the right benefits for my clients, but also that it's being engaged, it's creating an engaging piece for them as well. So when we're introducing it, I can be as creative as I want to, ensuring that every single member of staff understands that their health and wellbeing benefits, feels part of something bigger, and feels that investment as their employer saying to them, we really care about you. You are our core business, is you. You know, there would be no business without the employees there. You know, it's so important that staff feel that, and they have access again to the tools we've been talking about. So understanding benefits of meditation, and understanding mindfulness, and again talking to each other as well. It's a great opener. Have you checked out this new health and wellbeing benefit? Have you seen the meditation, the guided meditations in there? Have you seen, you know, that you can go and have a health assessment? You know, it's about self-care. Literally, that's what a health plan or a health insurance is about. It's all about self-care. It's bringing it back to the individual, saying you are worth looking after yourself and we care about you. But yeah, in that corporate environment where you've got everything, and I don't give myself enough of a pat on the back, and I'm sure you probably don't either, in terms of the hats that we wear. And you've got, I know, an amazing hat on at the moment, but the hats that we wear, you know, it's not easy to do all of the different roles that you need to do within a business, especially when you're a small business like we are. So how amazing are we that we can achieve that we can do that, and we're being successful with it. You know, we don't give each other credit, I don't think, or ourselves credit, I think, like we should do.
I think you're right, because I think, again, whether it's a certain type of person you are, or there's that negative thinking comes back in, I think we often take things for granted. So you're always looking from, right, now's the start point. What do I want from now? So then the expectations in yourself is to go above and beyond, which is fine. I don't like that phrase, but for some reason it just rolled off the tongue.
Above and beyond. That's from our corporate world. Definitely, I know where that's from.
Thinking, guys, no. So, but you get that expectation, but then if you suddenly don't feel like you're meeting that, you don't then have a measuring stick that goes, well, hang on, look where you've come from. So actually, when I talked about your employers being the compass and almost you having a boss, the one very basic mechanism that I can feel, no matter how I'm feeling emotionally or in that respect, is my gut feeling. So I've done things in the past that, you know, I've been involved in some really exciting projects. I've been involved with projects with the Leeds City Council, working with Refugee Council, trying to do exercise classes with those over Google Team or Google Meet, whatever it is. And it didn't work. Because there were several communication problems and language barriers and things that just weren't thought of by people that weren't me. I was the one, again, on the front line trying to run these classes, and something sat inside me, it just wasn't working. I didn't feel right before going on it. I felt like it wasn't going, and it actually took about 4 weeks of me trying to work, and I felt like I was back in a corporate entity again. I felt like I was back.
Oh gosh.
By that.
I can imagine that
actually
because
just
you're
said,
just trying to, yeah.
I said, look, at this point, I think it would be better if we pre-recorded something,
Yeah.
and then either got a translator to do a voiceover for it, or put subtitles in the various different languages. And I think that would be better, because it's not a financial thing for me.
No.
But doing this, turning up to these calls and not having a good response isn't working for me, and it isn't working for the people we're trying to do it for. And it's actually having the strength to then be able to say, look, I think you need to do it differently. Let me know if I can be involved in that part of it. But trying to say, well, actually, no, let's not do it the way we're doing it, and let's stop. But it took me a few weeks to get into that, because otherwise it was a good opportunity. It was serving my purpose, which is to help people.
Yeah.
Just sometimes things just don't feel right. And there's either a way that you can try and fix that, or actually, is it worth just putting that down for a minute, letting somebody else think about it if it's their project, and then filling your day with things that do feel right.
That's a massive learning though for you. And I've been through something similar where you kind of, you want to say yes because you ethically you can see the benefits of it, but without you actually in control of something, it can have a negative impact. So 100% I feel you for that, because I've been in that same situation, and learning from that means that the next project that you do take part in, you'll be able to sort of understand what the limits are within that, what you can bring to it, and what you need to be able to to resource it.
Certainly ask a lot more questions before just taking it on. In fact, I felt like just project managing it, because I could see all the ways in which we could do it differently, but it wasn't my baby. It was,
that's the hard thing, especially when you're used to having control over things. And for me and you as well, we care about how we impact, and we care about our brand and how we are seen as well. So that's why I'm very choosy about the clients that I work with, because I can be, and I want to have fun with my clients and work with clients who like me and want to achieve the same things that I do. But I think those are certainly for new business owners, those are learnings that you have to go through, and sometimes it hurts, but then outside of that, then you look back and you think, oh, that was so beneficial to me. And I hate being wrong, and I hate making mistakes. It's one of the pet things about me. I hate being late, anything like that. So it's hard for me to learn a lesson, but when I do learn it, boy, do I learn it, and I take it to heart.
I think definitely when you feel the strongest emotions, whether it be extreme happiness or actually a bit of, anger at yourself, I think there's definitely a learning point. It's definitely an experience that's going to stick with you and something to learn from. When you said about having fun, then it reminded me, I was on a call last night so one of the things that got me through the lockdown period again was a Monday group we used to have with a friend of mine now called Andrew Miller. So we used to have breathing spaces, which was like your coffee chats, was a little bit more focused around things like purpose or resilience or just getting through. But it was slightly business, but it was looking at maybe there might be a couple of people that are going through something at the minute. So it was a group session on, can anyone help out? Can anyone suggest anything? It was just a really nice chilled way, and that's grown into different groups. So I had a call last night, and one of the comments that was made was, if you love, and I'm kind of taking this on, but if you love your job so much, then actually your fun time, so for me that's going to the gym, or it might be going out for a walk, or it could be looking after yourself, your kind of non-work time, is actually your work time, because you're building on you. And your work time, when you're with clients or when you're speaking to people or with customers, is actually your playtime. That's your fun time, because you're getting to do the things that you really enjoy. And trying to avoid going off on a tangent, which is very difficult for me, and I don't know why I'm trying because it's inevitable. But I think definitely with this reframing and refocus with what's been going on, especially mental well-being, if you're in a position where you're in a job, a career, working for somebody that you don't feel good doing for, if you're not waking up and being excited for some part of that, some part of that job to go to that work day, then I would say you need to look at what it is. Can that be changed within the role that you're in? Or actually, do you need to start looking at what it is you want from a job, and then looking to find the job that fits that.
I understood this, and I read something recently that was very very pertinent to this sort of conversation. So I learned years ago when I was managing a sales team, when I was in that area, was you'd have a lot of people who would, I'm not sure if I can swear, but they piss and moan about their job all day long, but would do nothing about it. So they wouldn't go on training courses. They would just sit in the same position and moan about it constantly and not do anything about it. And I've never been one of these people. I've always been a person that as soon as I understood that there was no more that I could give to this particular role, or I was getting bored of it, or I fancied doing something else, then I would always look to, right, what can I do to change this? Because it's important that people realize that they have the potential to do anything they want to do. You know, and I've not come from I've not been financed by anybody. I haven't come from a rich family. If anything, the opposite. But what I've always been able to do is to use that sort of passion that I have and that understand that independence to say, right, this isn't working out for me. Let me see what I can do to change that and to do it. And I think for mental well-being, that's extremely important, because not everybody's in a place where they can change their job overnight. That's just not something that you can do. But what you can do is you can invest in yourself, whether that's time in developing and understanding what you want out of life, or whether that's time, doing a free course, or doing an online course, or, ordering, a 99 pence Kindle book. It needn't be expensive things that you do, but they will just prepare you and move you to that next chapter of your life, wherever that is. I think it's important, and I used to talk about it all the time when I was having one-to-ones with my staff, and I'd try and ask them what they wanted, what their motivations were, how I could help them. And sometimes there was so much work that needed to be done internally that it was just kind of getting them on that road. And I think it's really important, once you get on that road, you never come off it. You really don't.
I would agree. And I think a very, very simple thing to try and apply to start you off on that journey is, and anyone can do this, is something as simple as being more conscious of the decisions you're making on a daily basis. So getting back that control of the things you are making a decision on anyway. So it can be very, very menial things, but start thinking about why you're doing that thing and what it is about that thing that is the reason why you're doing it. And although that sounds very vague, something as simple as somebody once told me, and I can't for the life, I wish I could remember, because I've told this story so many times, and this person we're getting so much credit, but it was actually to turn a to-do list into a want to-do list. Because no matter what task is on there, if you really can say that you do not want to do that task or get the result you would get from doing that task, then either don't do it, it's not important enough, or give it to somebody else, so delegate. And I realized that things like, why do we wash the dishes? Why do we hoover up? Why do we do these tasks that sometimes we procrastinate and we do them instead of work, or sometimes we do work instead of doing them, we put them off. Even as a teenager, wasn't really that bothered about doing that. But actually you realize that I'm washing the dishes because I like the result of there being no dishes there. It's not I like the process of washing the dishes. I'm indifferent about that. But then realizing that you can actually live your day doing things that you want to do. When we say want to do, if you want to do anything, you naturally think, well, I'd love to go and play football.
You enjoy more. You enjoy life more, don't you? It's putting a spin on it. I used to hate Wednesdays, and I've told this story loads of times. I used to hate Wednesdays, and I don't know why, because Wednesday would be the day where I would normally get feedback from potential clients saying, yes, we want to go ahead. So I usually had a lot on a Wednesday, but for some reason I had it, it's society, hump day, or it's not quite the weekend, blah, blah, blah. And I turned it around and I turned it into Magic Wednesday, and I told my team, it's Magic Wednesday, today is where magic things happen. Get on the phones. What are we going to do today? And you do have to, and just reframing something slightly is huge. One other thing that I'd listened to the other day, I can't remember who it was. It might have been on Clubhouse, and I'd love to tell you who it was that shared this. There was a thing that I think it was Cher once said, like, ask yourself, is it going to matter in 5 years' time? So a lot of the time we worry and we do things, and it's not necessarily gonna help us get where we want to be in 5 years time. And I'm starting to look at my processes and my time management, and I'm looking at it holistically, and I'm looking at how why I do what I do. Is some of it just stuff that I've naturally done throughout my career, and can I do it differently?
Yeah.
But also delegating, and we mentioned this already, boundaries, what we're accepting and what we won't accept, and that is only going to make you a better person to work with ultimately, because you know you're spending your time on quality things that you enjoy doing. But yeah, that's been another challenge. So I had the imposter syndrome, and then how am I going to do everything? So I've kind of worked through it all, and like yourself, I've spun it a bit on its head, and I've prioritized what's important to what's going to get me where I want to be in 5 years, and prioritize that.
Yeah, that's really important. Seeing the bigger picture, and actually what effect is that going to have based on where you want to be. And I think something else that just came up then was going back to when we talked about being acceptant of who you are, because I know for me personally, there's been a massive influence, and I'm still trying to work through that from parents, and we all have it. So we get brought up with a certain set of values. You must do this, you must do that. As kids, it was, oh, your parents are well strict, or your parents don't care, or well chilled, or whatever it may be. We've all had a different experience. So therefore we have a different experience on what's right and wrong. And that's built, it's almost given to us, but it doesn't always sit well, because actually what you find is that you may well have rebelled against that at the time, because it just isn't what feels right to you. So it's sometimes about accepting, okay, so again, I'm just going to go back to household chores because it seems like the easiest to apply it to. But
you really don't like doing dishes, do you?
I'm fine with dishes. In fact, I do it every day. I love doing dishes. But now I realise why I'm doing it. It's a completely different task.
Yeah.
But if I'm not the tidiest person, for example, this is why you can't see the rest of the room. I'm kidding. So if I'm not the tidiest person, then part of me, and I've had times where I've felt low and I've thought this is, I really need to be a tidy person. Okay. So hang on a second. Question, why do I need to be a tidy person? So is it a priority for me to be tidy because I want a tidy room? Or am I thinking that because I've been brought up being told that actually, if you're not tidy, you're a bad person, or you're scruffy, or there's a negative connotation to that.
Yeah.
You only have to look at our bedroom, and we've had it for years, and we can have the joke about it as well of, you know, the woman's side of the bed looking like a complete bomb site, you know, and the guy's side of the bed having two things and probably a bit of dust and some mothballs rolling around. You know, and I'm not trying to be sexist or anything about that. I think that's a pretty well-known thing, but acceptance on who you are, and then applying yourself, and actually just, you know, if that thing's really important and actually it's not your priority and it doesn't fit within your priorities and you don't want to put that within your priorities, then get somebody else to do it. You know, or don't worry about it. Or, you know, if you, there's another thing about, pardon?
Or hide it from people.
Oh, hide it, cupboards.
It's interesting you say that, because I've from childhood onwards, I've not struggled with, but I don't come from a typical family background, you know, your mum and dad and you know, the sort of, I suppose, what you would typically class a normal family background at all. And there were a lot of things that I sought my own path quite early. From the age of 15, I knew that I didn't want to inherit some of the behaviors and patterns that I'd seen growing up. And because of that, I actually felt that my childhood and my experiences hadn't affected me or influenced my behavior or who I had become. And when I did start looking at myself and doing a bit of self-development, I understood that I actually think a certain way. And for instance, for a very long time, I would always have a plan B. in life. I'd have the course I was going down, but I'd always have a plan B, because I needed that security to know that if something fell through, I'd have this. And just little things that I would do. It was all going back to sort of having to be independent from a very young age. So I think that definitely doesn't, and that's why the sort of talking therapies helped me, was to understand why my brain worked in the way that it did. Not necessarily in a negative way, because most of the things are really good. I'm super organized, and I plan ahead. All of these things can be seen as positive, but they did stop me from some opportunities because I didn't have control over them. So it was about understanding that. So I think it does have an impact on you, and you need to make sure that it's working for you rather than against you. So if you want to live in a clean house, that's great. If you don't, you just do the minimum that you need to do, so it's not affecting you, and you're fine.
Yeah. I liken a lot of my stuff to superheroes and comic book stuff, because I'm a giant geek, which is great, and I love it, and I've now fully accepted it, which is great. But all of that falls for me within almost having a backstory. So superheroes always have a backstory, and they'll always have a chain of events. Now, unfortunately, with superheroes, it tends to be the death of someone close, and then a vengeance path or something, with somebody wanting to get back for that, or wanting to grow away from that, or and the one thing I say to people quite often, and that I tell myself as well, is that everything that's happened up until now, it's almost like the bricks. So imagine a house, and everything that's happened makes up who you are now. But it's not who you are now, and it doesn't determine what you do moving forward.
No.
So you imagine the house, so the bricks, so that's built it. It is a house, but what you do in that house, how you decorate that house, how you change that house, really is up to you. And the bricks cease to have any importance apart from the fact that they are there, and they've created this house. Because
you can't change them, but you can change how you use them. I think understanding that and where that comes from is great. But I totally get with the superhero thing. I think it's a great analogy, a great way of turning things around, doing things for yourself and becoming your own superhero. I've done it my whole life. I've depended on myself. Where I've fallen down is I've depended on myself so much that I've not let other people in. And that's been the struggle for me.
Again, that goes back to that fight or flight instinct, in the brain.
Oh, massively. It took me years to understand that, and I wish I'd done a bit more reading in my early 20s to understand the fight or flight, to understand that your brain is constructed that way. And that you can change that feeling just by understanding it a little bit more. I had a panic attack in my early 20s. I thought I was having a heart attack. I literally crawled out of my apartment into a taxi and went to the GP down the road. This is how ridiculous, just in a panic. I couldn't catch my breath. It was a panic attack, but I had no idea what it was. And I honestly thought that I was having a heart attack or a stroke or something. And that was the first sign of anxiety for me. But now I understand it. I've not had a panic attack in years and years and years now. But it's about understanding why you're feeling, how you can improve it as well. It's such the reason I love doing the podcast or just having the conversations with people that I do is because there's so much to get from somebody else's point of view and somebody else's story, and actually finding people like yourself that want to be able to talk about it and normalize it. Because like we said before, if you are that independent, especially in that situation, then you may well struggle to let people in. And that fight or flight comes from, it's the prehistoric brain. So for anyone that's not familiar with that, imagine a caveman going to be surrounded by giant predators, which may well eat you at any one time. You're looking for food, and that's your survival instinct. Nowadays, we've got takeaways on every corner, and the food isn't an issue anymore. We can all access food most of the time. Okay, there are some people that do struggle with that, and there are services for that. But we are the predator. So it's not like we roam the streets and we have lions everywhere that we have to avoid. We just don't have it. So what that pesky little part of the brain does is it makes mountains out of molehills, effectively.
It takes the smallest thing and then makes you worry so much about it that you look back and you go afterwards, why was I worrying about that?
Yeah.
You know, but it really can. It can super.
It'll get triggered and it'll take you back to a feeling you felt in your most trauma. Especially if you've been through any trauma in your life, you can be triggered and go back, and your body physically reacts like you're in that trauma again. With PTSD, I'm sure you've coached people with PTSD. It's all about it's literally your physicality, it's your brain, your chemicals in your brain, and how your brains work is to defend you. But what happens more often, and we're seeing a lot of people with anxiety now, is they don't understand that, and they're very fearful of it, and they feel that emotion, they go through that without understanding, you know, this is not what's happening right now, so I don't need to be feeling fearful, I'm safe. And that comes down to gratitude and grounding yourself and understanding where you are, and meditation helps you to do that as well. But yeah, I've learned so much. I have been hesitant about sharing my story, if you like, and that sort of thing, because I didn't want to come across as sort of contrite, or, you know, or telling people, you know, what they should do. But what I've learned especially over the last 12 months, is we need to hear each other's stories, so we understand that we're not alone. We're coming out of now a period where everybody has felt lonely, everybody has felt isolated, everybody has experienced anxiety to some level, to some degree. So we've all gone through it. Why are we not all talking to each other about it and supporting each other through it, and sharing how we help ourselves first, which is the important thing, in order to help each other. So I'm very happy to share my story now, but it did take me a while to be comfortable in that. And some people aren't comfortable, which is absolutely fine again. But if you are comfortable, I think there's a lot that you can get from being open and honest and comfortable enough with your own experiences to be able to share the stories.
Yeah, I've just thought of something actually, and I don't know whether when you just think something on the spot. So in terms of sharing stories, so we all get used to talking about qualifications through school, education, jobs. What qualifications have you got? I've got this, 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 and this. So this is what makes me able to do this job. Yeah. Okay, so let's turn that to our own history. What qualifies you to be the person you are today? Everything that's happened. Yeah. So it's almost the same thing.
I'm so overqualified, me, in life. I'm way overqualified.
Well, you're qualified enough to be an expert in you, is what you are.
I am, and yeah. I always get worried because of my business and what I do, and I always explain to people that, you know, I'm not a qualified mental health service provider or anything like that. I know the projects available for businesses, for staff, and I've worked in that area for years and years and years, and I've got my own journey. But I do fear that I don't want to be giving people advice. I just want to share, and this works for me, it might not be what works for you, and talk about the things that I've learned, and hopefully it will benefit somebody. But where I match the two is I can talk about my story when I'm explaining an employee benefit. I can talk about accessing counselling, and I can talk about visiting with a chiropractor, and all of the self-care that I've done through activating, through using my employee benefits, from using the health insurance, you know, after the ectopic pregnancy, and for the breast cancer scare, and what that did, you know, how that helped me with my mental well-being when I was going through those traumas, if you like. So yeah, it's important that we share. I think you need to be in the right environment to do that, and to be comfortable. I'm quite comfortable sharing my story with you and your platform, because I believe in your platform and what you're doing. I think it's the right space for sharing. I wouldn't necessarily share, you know, in terms of putting stuff into LinkedIn for everybody to view, but people who are interested in personal development, want to listen to my story, absolutely, I'd be happy to share.
It's not an expose on the front, or something like that. But I think you're absolutely right there. Just to pick up on one point, that some people will not, because there's some things that you're just not comfortable talking about now. Just like you would divulge stuff to maybe your best friend, you might have a relative that you confide in. I think it's important to realize that it's about finding the right set of ears to listen.
Yeah.
And also going against the grain a little bit, it's not always the people you would expect. So, for instance, just because you've got a best friend that you love to bits, if they don't understand, or if they're not on the same wavelength as what you're experiencing, then talk to somebody else. They're not going to be offended because you're not talking to them. It's about talking to the right person, which can be people you meet over Zoom. It can be people that you've known in the past. It can be people that you've not known for very long. But if you open up that safe space, then that can be enough. I just thought I'd say that because, you know, there's people in my life that you would think, oh, well, can't you talk to them? Well, no, I can't, because they won't understand. But I've managed to find people that will understand.
You need to find your Avengers. We call them at Mindsight, we call them our Avengers, which fits in nicely to the superhero. Find your Avengers. Who, you know, I have somebody that I go to you know, when I need a light-hearted moment, who can take the mick out of me. I've got somebody that I can speak to, you know, when I've got something serious that I need to work through, and those people, a majority of my Avengers are people that I've met within the last 12 months, believe it or not. You know, your family and friends are great, but you know, you need to find the people that can give you what you need, and again, do it for yourself, and make sure that you are picking and surrounding yourself by people who are going to help you to, you know, whether you are going through periods of anxiety, help you get out of that, or help you, you know, transition into a different stage of your life. Everybody needs coaches, and coaches, you know, all superheroes don't wear capes, as they say. I've found inspiring people in sort of service stations before now. Conversations that I've had with strangers have inspired me. It's amazing where you can find inspiration and knowledge, and I think that's what it is. It's just about sharing and understanding.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to anybody, you know that, Matt. I'll literally strike up a conversation in an empty room.
Talk the hind legs off of a donkey.
I was a bit concerned about the podcast. I thought this could go on for hours, this, and I was quite sure if he knows how long I could talk.
No, it's fine. I cleared my diary for the rest of the day. But I've just lost what I was going to say. I do this. I thought I'd got away with doing a podcast without forgetting what I was going to say.
I do it all the time. I get these blanks in my brain. Don't worry.
Yeah, light bulb moment. Ching. Okay, so the other point I want to make as well is, if anyone's thinking, you know, listening to this and going, my friends, my family, most of them don't understand. Maybe they don't inspire you, maybe they don't motivate you, but you love them to bits. That doesn't mean, it doesn't take anything away from that. What you can also do is, rather than have these physical people surrounding you, is have things like podcasts, audiobooks. Those people are as much of an influence, if not more, as the people you talk to on a daily basis. Surround yourself with those kind of people. You know, get yourself, you know, on Spotify, something like that. You know, funnily enough, hopefully at some point, some people will listen to these, and these can be part of the influence for somebody, which is the reason why they're out there.
Podcasts have been so beneficial to me, especially throughout lockdown, where I felt very lonely. And I was looking for answers to imposter syndrome. I was looking to, even when I was cynical about some of the things that I saw, you know, in terms of law of attraction and stuff, I've always been quite a pragmatic individual, and I thought, you know, this is all sort of whimsical, and I don't, but I dug into it, and I understood the philosophy behind it, and I understood how I could change how I could change my way of thinking to empower me and to get myself out of a bad place. One of the books that I was recommended by my good friend Sarah Linus was Lost Connections. I'm not sure if you've ever read that, but it's such an inspiring book. I'd recommend that to anybody who's doing a bit of personal development, or has gone through anxiety or depression, maybe even had antidepressant tablets prescribed to them. What Johann Hari does is he travels the world looking at communities and looking at mental well-being and the impact of purpose and the impact of community, and what impact that has in turning around someone's clinical diagnosis, if you like. So it's not poo-pooing on antidepressants, because I absolutely think that they have a place, but if you read Lost Connections, I've read it twice because I enjoyed it so much, and it just lifts your heart just to read these stories in there. There's quite a few books that I've read, but I'm 100% like you. Like I said, you know, it doesn't cost a lot. I've even had books sent to me by people. So talk about the fact that you want to do a bit of personal development. Have you read any books? People will have books on their shelves they can send to you. It doesn't need to cost you a fortune.
I've sent a couple out to people because I'm not a massive repeat reader, but I think if it's going to help somebody else, then I will send it to them, you know. And
I don't watch much TV anymore either. I used to watch TV quite a bit, and I get a lot of enjoyment now from listening to podcasts. Not all of them are personal development. Mark Maron is one of my favorite podcasters, and I love listening to him, just because I love the way that just his personality is. He's quite agitated as a human being, and it tickles me when I listen to him rant and rave. But anything you do for yourself, if you take an hour for yourself, you're going to feel better about yourself, no matter what that is, whether it's crochet, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to a podcast. I'll
tell you what, I was listening to this morning on my walk, and it's going back a little bit spiritual. Deepak Chopra.
Oh, well, yeah, I know Deepak. Yeah.
And some of that really spiritual, the kind of you've got the Indian influences in the music, and just in the sunshine, walking around the park. It was absolutely amazing.
How magical. And meditation for me is something I've always been scared of, because I've always felt like I haven't got the attention to clear my mind, and I literally forced myself to do it, because I thought, well, if I'm not going to give it a try and be consistent with it, then I'm never going to see the benefits. And I'm one of these people, I need to read about it to make sure it works, or understand how it works before I'm going to, you know, give it time, because, you know, time is one of those things. It's quite precious as a small business owner. But I'm not, you know, to these states where, you know, I'm astral projected or anything like that. But just having that space to not think about things has been really beneficial to me. And the guided meditations that I listen to really help. And again, it's having that time, taking that time for yourself.
Just when you said about astral projections, it reminded me of one of the first books that I bought, was on recommendation, was Eckhart Tolle, and it was The Power of Now, and it's a really, really popular.
Oh, I listened to that when my sister. I'll tell you a quick story just before you go on. So I had that on Audible, and it was when we had the family tragedy. I was looking after my sister. I'd moved up to the northwest from Wales, and she'd come out with me every day on my appointments in my car. So I had the company car, and I had that Power of Now on, and it was so beneficial for her to listen. And it's the only reason I put it on there was because I was trying to think of things that I could do. Oh, I would, that's a huge recommendation. And did you have the Audible where you listened?
No, I had the book. I read the book. I'm not a massive reader. I'd rather listen, but I had the book on that occasion. And there was so many pages that I'd bookmarked. And there's one thing that sticks out for me, and it's because some of it goes very deep and some of it will be quite difficult to read. But it's the idea of mindlessness. So we talk about mindfulness. And then we go one step further and say the mind is a tool, and we can put that down. Now, things like meditation is difficult because we've got crowded brains, we've got lots of thoughts coming in, and it is about practicing being able to accept them, let them flow on, put them down, whatever it is. Almost, you know, it's almost like tidying that bedroom in your head. You know, it's like putting things in the right place. But yeah, it fascinated me, the idea that you could actually come away from your thoughts. And actually just be in a space where nothing's happening. And I found it a couple of times when I've meditated. Sometimes if I'm doing it at the wrong time or there's too much noise going on, it is a lot more difficult. But there's times where I don't know whether I'm still meditating or whether I've fallen asleep, or I wake up and I feel so refreshed, and there's just nothing. You go into these flashes of color and all this stuff starts to happen, you know, and your eyes and your brain are working in such a way. But yeah, that book had a big impact as well. I think
it had a massive impact to me as well. There's so much to learn from that, and I found it difficult in parts as well. And I think when you do come across a book or a podcast where you find it difficult, is because there's something there that you need to sort of work on, and you can revisit it, you can come back to it. You haven't got to fix everything that goes on in your brain all at once, but coming back to meditation, I think it's so important. It's very hard to meditate when you're in a level of high anxiety, or when you're on that. We're all in a spectrum. We all go from, you know, good mood to bad mood, high anxiety to low anxiety, and that sort of thing. I think by practicing and again making it a regular thing, it means that when you can't stop those thoughts and they are intrusive and they are fast and you are experiencing anxiety, it's very hard then to start meditating at that point. What you need to do is just make those little changes now, as early as possible, so that you can contain and maintain good mental well-being, whether that's introducing exercise now, not waiting until it becomes a health issue, but do these little things now. And I think with age comes wisdom. There's a lot of things I wish I'd started earlier, a lot of things I wish I'd cut out earlier. I don't really have regrets per se, but there's a lot of things I wish I'd educated myself more earlier. But a lot of things that we're discussing now weren't discussed 10 years ago. We're very lucky that people are sharing information and talking now. Like this podcast, for instance, it wasn't around 10 years ago.
No, it definitely wasn't. I wish it was.
I do too. It would have been great.
It's absolutely fascinating. It's been amazing to be able to kind of to explore that, because we only arranged this like 3 or 4 days ago, so it's not.
Yeah.
And the reason why these are in the format they are is to keep it nice and organic and just see where the conversation goes, rather than I've been guests on podcasts where it's been very much question based, very almost scripted, and it's there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on people to turn up and be that, and and do it almost, you feel like it's live, whereas we could be having a cuppa, sat in a room having this conversation, which I may well do something in person. That'd be quite cool.
That would be nice. I've done a few webinars. This is my first podcast and it was on my wish list, funnily enough. So when you approached me, I was like, bit your hand off. I was like, I'm dying to do a podcast. But I like the fact that your podcasts are organic and they're interesting, and they're interesting people as well. And it's not scripted. And I don't believe scripting doesn't work for me. It never has. Even as a salesperson, I've never worked well to a script in my life. But I think this is a really good format, and I think I really admire what you're doing. And I like you, have been following your progression on LinkedIn, albeit we've not worked together for several years.
No.
I've always liked you as a person, and I feel good energy from you. And I've been very proud of you, watching you. Progress over the last few years. So I'm very grateful to be invited on, and I hope I've provided some value to you, hopefully.
That's really nice to hear that, because I too identify with some of the imposter syndrome traits, and actually thinking that I could have that kind of importance or that kind of, I suppose, gravitas to somebody seems completely alien. But actually, and another thing before we will have to wrap up in a second, but when somebody says something nice, it's very easy to not believe it. It's very easy. It's that kind of British thing. It's okay. It's what's expected of me. But actually, the one thing that I learned is, if somebody says something nice to you, they didn't have to.
No.
In essence, it's a gift.
Yeah.
So if at Christmas somebody gave you a gift and you were like, "Oh no," it's almost like saying it's not quite good enough. Like, you're not accepting it.
Yeah.
So
it's an insult to me. Unless you accept it, it's an insult to me, because I genuinely mean that. And I learned that because I'm not good at taking credit like you. I think there's we have a lot in common in that. And it was a lady called Andy Lewis who explained to me, when somebody gives you thanks, what the effect is if you don't actually accept that and feel that, and just say thank you. Don't say, oh well, I'm not, just say, oh, thank you, because somebody genuinely means that. But you've been very inspiring, and I'm looking forward to, and that's why I've been following you for the last few years, seeing what you're going to do, because I know that you are going to create something amazing for yourself and for others as well. So definitely following on, and if there's anything I can do to help support that, to reach out, get in touch.
Perfect, thank you very much. Just before we go then, if anyone does want to get in touch with you, whether it's business and learn more about Pegasus, or whether it's just to talk to you because you're a cool person, what is the easiest way for them to do so?
Well, they can reach out to me. They can have a look on the website to find my email address or my mobile phone number. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm literally all over the socials. So I'm on Instagram. I don't do a lot on Facebook. I've got a favorite platform, which is kind of LinkedIn. And Instagram I do quite a bit on. So any of the social channels. I've just started on TikTok, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
And that proper, just, we were talking about enjoying what we do and creativity and stuff. I love TikTok, and I'm gonna explode on there once I've got a bit of time to do some content for it. I think that would be a really good space for me. But yeah, just reach out to me, LinkedIn, drop me a message. I like chatting to people, anybody. I like to have a conversation with. I'm doing a lot of networking with Real 5 network group at the moment, so I do meet new people all the time. So as well as my sort of health and well-being sort of area, where I know a lot of providers that can help support employees and stuff, I also know a lot of different business owners, so there's a lot of people I can hopefully introduce you to if that's helpful to anybody. So yeah, just give me a text message, email, call, however you prefer to speak. I'm doing a lot of Zooms, and I know you like my little Zoom room, so if somebody fancies jumping on a Zoom with me, they can do that. We can book in directly through the website. It's not quite OnlyFans, but the twinkly lights are certainly very bougie.
You're gonna start saying you're an accountant now, aren't you?
No, definitely not an accountant. But I do know a few accountants, and the true ones, not the OnlyFans. But yeah, I'm quite enjoying the Zoom room. It's I just like seeing people, chatting to people. So yeah, get in touch with me.
No, wonderful. Well, thank you very, very much for this time and for sharing what you have as well. I know it won't have always been easy, but hopefully, if we can, the aim of this is if we can change one person's thoughts, or if we can change one person's day around, then that's job done, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
No.
And I'll speak to you soon.
Yes, speak to you soon.
Man alive, we could have talked forever. Thank you. If you got to this point, thank you for listening to all we had to say. Hopefully there's something you can take away from it. And that really, really is the purpose of these videos and podcasts as well. I'm meeting some incredible people. I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to meet these people, speak to these people, and then I'm able to share this message and these things with you. So please, if you've enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button. Click the little bell for more notifications, so when the next video comes out, you'll be the first one to know. And like always, if you're out for a walk and you prefer a bit of a podcast, you can find that on anchor.fm/superherofinder. And if you just want to visit my website, you're interested in hoodies or items of clothing, or just to see general inspiration on I'm Doing It For Me, it is www.imdoingitfor.me. That's all from me. And all I want to say is, as always, stay super.